Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's great to see you all again today. My name is Dan, and in today's episode, we're diving into setting up Postgres with PyCharm. We'll also be using Psycopg to connect to the database from our Python code. This is a fantastic combo for working with relational databases within your Python projects. Let's get started. Now, before we jump in, let's talk a little bit about Postgres for folks who might be unfamiliar. Postgres is a powerful open-source database system that's been around for many years. It's a reliable workhorse for storing and managing all sorts of data for your applications. But what makes Postgres so popular? Well, compared to some other database systems, Postgres offers a few key advantages. First, it's incredibly robust and stable, which means you can count on it to keep your data safe and accessible. Second, Postgres is very versatile. It can handle a wide range of data types, from simple numbers and text to complex objects, and even geospatial data. Third, all the major cloud providers like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure offer managed Postgres services. Finally, Postgres is constantly being developed and improved by a large community of contributors, so you can always be sure you're using cutting-edge technology. If you don't already have Postgres installed on your system, you can grab it here. Click on the Download button, choose your operating system, and follow the installation instructions they provide. Of course, if you prefer, you can also use a managed Postgres instance from a cloud provider for this tutorial. Let me also say a few more words about Psychopg before we finally move on to the code. Psycopg is the most popular adapter for connecting Python to Postgres databases. It acts like a bridge, allowing you to send commands and interact with your Postgres data directly. Now, there are other tools called Object Relational Mappers, or ORMs, that can abstract some of that interaction for you. But Psychopg offers a more low-level approach. That might sound less user-friendly, but here's the benefit. Because Psychopg has fewer layers in between you and the database, it is faster and more efficient. Plus, if you're already comfortable with SQL, Psychopg lets you build powerful and efficient database interactions tailored to your needs. We'll be using Psychopg 3 in this tutorial. It's the latest and greatest version of the Psychopg adapter, designed from the ground up to take advantage of newer features in both Python and Postgres. A big shout out to Daniele Varazzo for his work on this project. Psychopg 3 offers a bunch of cool features we'll explore in future episodes, but for now, we'll focus on the basics to get you started. And hey, if you ever run into any roadblocks with your code, Psychopg has excellent documentation to help you troubleshoot. All right, everyone, now that we've covered Postgres and Psychopg, let's switch gears and move over to PyCharm. In PyCharm, we'll set up the connection between our Python code and the Postgres database we discussed earlier. As always, you'll find the complete code for this project over on GitHub. The link to the repository is down in the description below, so be sure to grab it if you want to follow along at home. To get started, we'll need to install all the necessary dependencies for this project. We'll be using Poetry for this, which is a great tool for managing dependencies. If you're new to Poetry and dependency management in general, don't worry. In a previous video, I walked through how to set up your Python development environment, and that included using Poetry. So, if you need a refresher, check out that video before we move on. All right, now that we have everything ready on the Python side, let's set up the connection to our Postgres instance within PyCharm. Heads up, this functionality is only available in the professional edition of PyCharm, not the free community version. To get started, look for the database icon in the top right corner of PyCharm. Once you find it, click on that icon, then hit the plus sign to add a new data source. In the list of options, choose Postgres. Let's configure the connection to our Postgres instance. Remember, I'm using a local Postgres installation, so the hostname is set to localhost. If you're using a cloud instance, you'll need to enter the specific address provided by your cloud service here. The default port for Postgres is 5432, so we'll leave that as is. Since I'm working with a local instance without any special authentication setup, I'll choose No Auth for the connection type. If you have a username and password for your Postgres instance, be sure to enter those details here instead. Now, let's test the connection to make sure everything is working smoothly. Click the Test Connection button. Hopefully, you'll see a success message. If so, go ahead and click OK to finalize the connection setup. All right, with the connection established, let's move on to creating a new schema in our Postgres database. Right-click on the recently added Postgres instance in the PyCharm Database Tools window. From the context menu, select New and then Schema. Now you can give your schema a name. I'll be calling mine Demo for this example, but feel free to choose a name that best suits your project. Now that we have our schema set up, let's create a table inside it to store some data. Here's a simple SQL script that creates a table called Users with two columns, ID and Name. We can actually run this script directly within PyCharm to create the table in our schema. To do that, we'll need to attach a session to this script. You can select a session in the bar that just appeared at the top. Double-check that you select a session of the Postgres instance you want to use. Since we're working with a specific schema, demo in our case, we need to add it to the search path. This tells Postgres where to look for the schema when we execute the script. Go ahead and add demo to that path here. Now we're all set. Back in the script editor, click the Execute button in the top left corner. This will run the SQL code and create the users table within your demo schema. If everything went smoothly, you should see that a users table was created inside your schema. Now that we have our table set up, we can use Psycopg to interact with it from our Python code. To do that, we'll need to define some SQL templates that Psycopg can understand and execute. Here are a couple of examples. One for creating a new user and another for selecting a user from the table. Notice the placeholders in these templates. These act as markers for Psycopg to insert values when it runs the queries. The cool thing is we can actually try these templates out right here in PyCharm. Let me show you how amazing this is. You see the error message that Psycharm isn't able to find my users table. You can click here on Choose Schema. The bar at the top of the script appears again. Make sure you have a session of your Postgres instance selected in this window. Then, in the section for Schema Search Path, add your demo schema again. Now that we've set up the session, let's try out one of the SQL templates. I will right-click on one of the template to create a new user. From the context menu, select Execute. This will bring up a window where you can enter values for those placeholders we saw earlier. In the field provided, type in a username you want to create. Once you've entered the name, go ahead and click Execute again. If everything works correctly, you should see a message indicating that the query was successful. This means you've just created a new record in your users table using a SQL template within PyCharm. Pretty amazing, right? All right, we've conquered quite a bit so far. Now, let's dive into the Python code and see how we can leverage Psycopg to connect to our Postgres database and manage the data in our users table. To get started in our Python script, we'll need to import a couple of things from Psychopg. First, the connect class is essential for establishing that connection to the database. We'll also bring in a helpful method that makes creating the connection string much easier. This connect method accepts several arguments, including the host address, port number, and the database name you want to connect to. Optionally, you can provide your username and password if your Postgres instance requires authentication. Here's a good practice to keep in mind. We'll use a Python construct with statement to manage the connection. This ensures that the connection is automatically closed at the end of the code block, even if there are errors. It also helps handle any potential issues gracefully. We use the same concept to manage the cursor object as well. First, we leverage the Create User template to insert a new user record into our users table. After creating the user, we can switch over to the Get User template to retrieve the information about the newly created user and confirm everything worked as expected. If everything goes smoothly, you should see the user's information printed in your console. This verifies that the connection and data manipulation using Psychopg were successful. All right, folks, that's it for today. We covered a lot of ground. We connected our Postgres instance to PyCharm, learned how to run SQL queries in PyCharm, and even dipped our toes into using Psychopg to interact with the data. In the upcoming episodes, we'll take things a step further and explore how Psychopg can be combined with other powerful libraries to create even more robust Python applications. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode, and as always, happy coding.